So we have a lot of time for discussion because two speakers didn't take their 25 minutes. So there is some questions from the audience about two presentations focusing on maritime economy and maritime transport from one side and the cruise tourism on the other.
I have a question for you about the cruise and the environmental impact and regulation on the environmental impact. So you said that very low standard, low international standard in terms of environmental impact regulation. Who is putting this regulation? Is it each country where the cruise port? So my question is really about regulation of the environmental impact of the cruises. So who put this regulation? Is it depends of each port where the cruise stay, or is it more the company? How does it work?
Actually, there are the international maritime organizations, IMO, to set about some of the regulations about the marine environment. But the point is that the Chinese government is pay about the minimal support about the cruise liner and about the cruise port about to maintain about the green shipping environment. And so that there is a little motivation about that. So that's why I said that they are still far below about the international standard. It's about the main problem. IMO has about set about all the standard to all the world. But Chinese government most likely in the 5 years plan or some of the key issues, there are very few agenda to mention about this about the green environment on the cruise shipping aspect.
So, do you think that the regulation are stronger in North America or in Europe than it is for the Chinese cruise?
Yes, of course they are. The government the local government is quite fully support about that. So that's why China is still has a problem to maintain about the green marine environment as well. So that actually I see that some of the cruise shipping companies or cruise port try their efforts, but the capital or some of the regulations has made them some of the problems or obstacles to proceed with the green environment.
I would like to come back to the harbor clusters you mentioned in your presentation. So does Shanghai, the harbor of Shanghai, will be strong enough to compete against the cluster of Ningbo and the southern harbor? And what do you think about the south, the Guangdong harbor cluster with regard to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong belongs to this cluster, southern cluster?
You focus on the compete between
Shanghai versus Ningbo and beyond, and Guangzhou and beyond, and Hong Kong.
It's a good question, and many people are interested in neighboring ports. And we know that during this recent years, and Shanghai government want to develop the high-end maritime industry, and such as financial or other things related to maritime. And Ningbo Port has the advantage of the deep water, and also it has a resource of a bank. So they want to shape more and more countries. And about the Guangdong, such as Guangzhou ports and Guangzhou port and Shenzhen port and Hong Kong port. In my opinion, that Hong Kong want to develop the airline, not use maritime, because maritime especially for the content will give the cities pollution, air pollution or other and not good things to the city. So they want to develop the airline. They want to build a good or important hub in the airline network. Yeah.
They are already the first airport for cargo in the world.
So they are already leader for cargo in the airplane, but Hong Kong has also a very big harbor. I mean, is it integrated to the Greater Bay? No, not the Greater Bay, but to the cluster you mentioned. Or I mean, is this cluster with Guangzhou, Shenzhen is already set up, or?
Yes. And you know that in Guangzhou there is a Nansha port. It's a new port. It developed very quickly because it has a big hinterland, and also it has a deep water port. So it has advantage. Yes.
Yes, I mean, so it's a kind of competition to death between this cluster and Hong Kong, and I think it will be the same with Shanghai and the cluster of Ningbo and the southern of Fujian.
Yeah, and you know that during in this year, and there are many ports, and some government, local governments, want to build bigger and ports, but the other government did not want to the port become bigger because the bigger ports has the pressure to the city. So they want to develop this high-end maritime industry, such as financial or other things. Yeah.
I have a question about the integration of the port park city concept. You mentioned that the integration or the interaction of the port and city can promote sustainable development of the park and the city, I guess. And I was wondering how the integration can promote sustainable development of the area.
You know that there is a circle in Shenzhen. It's a successful case. And at first they developed the port. Then there are many resources shaped by the port. Then the behind of the port, they built a pocket to attract the factories. And then many people work in the factory. Then they built a city to support the people's living or other business things. So they want to copy the model, port, park, and the city in the foreign ports.
Right, but how in what way is the development going to be sustainable?
What's different meaning of sustainable? Do you mean biologically? You mean environmentally sustainable?
Yeah.
Yeah. You might want to specify what kind of sustainability.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I guess environmental sustainability. If it is environmentally sustainable.
For the sustainability of the port park city, that I know in my opinion that if the port developed quickly, then they can contract many containers or other resources to use the port, and then the park maybe based on the port's development, they can develop very quickly, and at the end, the cities can attract many people to there, and so they can develop separately.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I do want to continue on the question about the concept of ports and the park and the city. I think as we know, I think nowadays when we talk about ports, it can be cruise terminals, it can be container terminals. It's actually different type of terminals and complex. So while maybe freight terminals, usually now, even before this concept, many of them are moving out of the city, as we know very well. But then for cruise terminals, for example, it has a completely different concept. And so you may want tourists to actually, right the time when the cruise arrive at the port, is already at the city, so that they can enjoy the landscape, they can enjoy the activities which is near to the city. So can you comment a little bit when you mentioned about port park city concept? In terms of the port, are they planning to have everything related to port? I don't care about cruise, freight, passengers, or what. Are they all concentrated in one area, or are they still trying to define where exactly a particular facility will be located somewhere within the city based on the nature of the economic activity of this particular sector, such as container terminals versus cruise terminals?
I know that there is a difference between the port and shipping the containers and the cruise port. And as the case, you know that so-called, it's at first it's a big container port, but now it was changed into the cruise. I see that you are very know for this case. And in the foreign countries, I think that it is not good to develop the cruise terminals, because it was depend on the market. Yes, there are many people to use the cruise, so they can build the cruise. But if there are no people to use the cruise, so it's not successful to build the cruise terminals. So as the case of the China in the foreign countries, they built the port for containers terminals at first. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
May I have another question to Joseph? Because in terms of cruise, especially cruise development is getting pretty fast, especially in East Asia.
Yeah.
And I know apart from Hong Kong, like Hainan and everywhere, they're talking about building cruise. So in your opinion, in terms of marine ecology, what do you think will be the rapid development of cruise sector and cruise terminals on marine ecology? And also, with this in mind, if there are any impacts, so do you have any suggestions in terms of how cruise, in terms of, for example, the route, the network, the way on how they should be navigating? What will be your comments? What will be your suggestions on how we look to marine ecology, and how should cruise planning and cruise policies should be implemented? Thank you.
Actually, that I think I have discussed in this early morning with my friend. Also, China also supports about some of the cruise shipping in the Arctic regions, and so that I think in the future, I think actually that the cruise shipping can be developed between some of the routings between China and also Arctic shipping, and also Arctic shipping is a good about the cruise tourism regions about that. And from my point of view, that actually that how to plan about the routings. I think the first one, the Chinese government need to disclose some of the data very clearly, and also very transparency, because nowadays of the Chinese scholar also discussed with me that actually they do not know what exactly of the cruise passengers know what they want, because the cruise port has the different types of the different components about that. And so that I think they need to learn exactly what they want and plan about the strategy is very better about that. And I also think the cruise, as I said, is about to try to develop some of the Belt and Road integrative routings about that. So I think from my points, it's about actually China can be to redesign about some of the routings based on the what data can they get in the future as that.
Well, I think the cruise ship business is huge. And then I had twice joined the scientific expedition to observe the total solar eclipse in the middle of Pacific Ocean. So we chartered a 100,000 tons cruise ship, start from Hawaii, traveling south through Fiji Island and Samoa Island, and then end to the observation site, pinpoint by GPS. So we took watched the total solar eclipse, and then traveling south to New Zealand and end up in Australia. That's about 20 days trip. I mean, only the cruise ship can do this, And then, as we know that China is growing so fast, people like to travel by sea because most of the people living in China are inland. They haven't been to a, seashore. So that's why Hong Kong built a new Kai Ta terminal to handle the largest cruise ship. Just like the shipping company, they keep building larger and larger ships, twice the size as the nuclear carrier, the Navy ships, twice the size, the 200,000 ton, maybe even bigger, to carry more passengers. So this should be a very good future for cruise sailing.
Yes, thanks for this audience, and I also think that actually that it is a very huge potential market in the new cruise product about in cruise tourism, and so but I think actually in Shanghai or in Hong Kong, just my comments is about they have the new cruise terminal, but their connectivity or the transport infrastructure is still left behind, and so that they need to how to redevelop or become as a second about the tourism city to attract more cruise ship, especially in the Kai Ta cruise terminal or the second terminals in Shanghai as well.
Do you have a kind of comparison somehow between tourism using cruise boats and tourism using airlines? Any way to compare? Because that's just say 20 days of cruising. If you do it by with the distance, if you do it by airplanes with multiple stops, it can be somehow comparable or it's too difficult to measure. You know what I mean? The fuel or the impact you reduce, the carbon impact you have with the airlines compared to the carbon impact of the cruise.
Actually, in the past months, I think I have think about one topic about the fly cruise, about how to develop about some of the good routings or some of the connectivity point between airport and the cruise port. Nowadays, there are the problems about the connectivity between airport and the cruise port is still a problem about the schedule, about lot are very convenient. And so that I still struggle about how to get about the data because most likely in China, I have already asked about in the college about in the business school, he told me that about the fly cruise is not very common in China. It's the whale plus cruise is very common. Because they may think that it's more convenient to buy about the ticket about in the rail stations. And the fly cruise is not very common in China. And so that I need to find out the reasons or some of the motivations how to increase about the new product about the fly cruise in China. In Asia, in other parts, I think 5 cruise is very common. But it is a very good topic about that.
Thank you very much. Really, for either or both of you speakers just now, I'd like to pick up that question that was raised earlier on sustainability. Given that the theme of these 2 days, we're talking about the challenge of sea and ocean sustainability, and you did present in your talk some really quite high figures in relation to impacts on the environment because of what's produced by the liners. I haven't yet heard anything about how, or whether there have been discussions about how these will be addressed. Will cruise ships be required and monitored in relation to international standards? What will be done? What is being discussed, if anything, about the issue of sustainability in terms of impacts on the environment, the marine environment, and air pollution, these types of things. So that's for either or both speakers. It's also relevant in terms of reclamation to build ports and things like this. So really, it's different aspects of environmental sustainability are relevant to both of the talks.
And there are many important ports in China, and they are very important in the world. And so during this time, they want to enlarge their maritime network to connect the foreign ports. But during this time, in my opinion, that they have many pressure to develop the income, because you know that ports investment is very large, and also they need a very long time to get the income from the port. So during this time, they want to build more and more shipping lines between China and the foreign country to get more resources to use the port. And also, just like our case, and they want to build a port, rail, or port packet, or city to maintain the accessibility. Yeah.
Can I follow up? Yeah. So how does that sit with the 13th five-year plan and the concept of eco-civilization, about being sort of environmentally responsible? How will that development be done considering eco-civilization within China, for example?
You mean that about the environment of the port?
Yeah.
So
impacts on
I work in the city Shanghai, and because the port is very bigger, and there are many carts to ship the containers around the city. So the Shanghai is not encourages containers shipped by ports in the future. They want to the other ports in Jiangsu province or Zhejiang province to ship the containers by other provinces, by other ports in other provinces. And also the city want to develop the other industry of the maritime. And they want to develop the financials or other insurance of maritime, not only focus on the containers. Yeah, because we know that the ships pollution is very heavy for the city. Yeah.
Are China's ports profitable? And Is there overcapacity in the ports?
Sorry, I beg your pardon?
Are China's ports profitable? You outlined a lot of expansion of China's ports all up and down the coastline. Are they profitable? You said there's a huge investment required to build a new port. How long before they are profitable? Are they profitable now? Do you know?
Sorry, I don't know, because it's about the investment of the companies. So the details of the things I don't know. Yeah.
In fact, I think I can help maybe answering a little bit too. Because I think when you talk about whether port investment is profitable, two things. One thing is about, in terms of their balance books, are they making a profit? The other thing is that for ports and, in fact, for transport infrastructures, what is the social welfare that they actually generate? I think in a lot of Chinese ports nowadays, especially the major ones, a lot of the terminal facilities are privatized. So what they do have is different terminals may be operated by port operator or even by shipping lines, but then above it, they have a port authority which is responsible for the overall strategic planning. I would say, at least my limited knowledge, as far as I understand, is the reason why port terminals were privatized in the first place was because before it was not profitable. The whole objective was different, and terminals need massive billions of dollars investments, which will involve a lot of taxpayer money and means that there will be political issues. And so they privatized. The aim was actually to make it profitable. And in fact, you're right. If you are in southern China, for example, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Hong Kong, there is huge capacity that within like 100 km, you have so much capacity that the next area which has a similar situation will be in Western Europe, from Le Havre, Rotterdam, Antwerp, and Hamburg, but they were like 800 km apart. So a lot of competition, but so far I think they are, in general, they are profitable. But I think now the next step is also the question about, because they become profitable, which is operated by private companies. And so to what extent are they also generating, in economic terms, positive externalities to the surrounding areas? And we found that the last 20 years or so, it didn't seem that they were operating our own business, but then the port facilities and city and the surrounding area become some kind of segregated. And which is not only China. In fact, in Canada, in Europe, there are similar problems arising. And so I think now that's a great question, because I think it turns out that this whole idea about port-city integration is that as we solve a particular problem of being profitable, but to what extent that port facilities can actually integrate back into the city so that the whole city and region is profitable in this sense.
I have a question for Professor Wang. The protection of the environment is the responsibility of the states, but also of the enterprises. So I would like to know if you mentioned Costco and China Shipping and China Merchant, three biggest Chinese companies in the maritime transport sectors. Do these enterprises have some strategies in terms of sustainability? Because some companies in the world, I can take the example of the French company, CMA-CGM, is developing some plan for being more friendly with the environment. So I would like to know if you have some information about this kind of measures and initiatives by the Chinese companies.
That you focus on the shipping companies to cooperate or to campaign one companies, and you know that this is pushed by the central government, they want to a bigger company to compete with foreign shipping companies. But in my opinion, that it's not good for the companies because it was controlled by the government. They has not freedom to do based on the economic rulers. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.